I see education is online. Yes, Ms. Hassan Musa?
Good afternoon. Yes, we are in.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Yes, Ms. Hassan Musa?
Chair, we are quorum.
Perfect. Thank you so much. I'll then start the meeting. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me. It is 1 o'clock on this Tuesday afternoon. My name is Deirdre Bartman. We are here for the Education Committee. Today, we're going to be dealing with the briefing by the Western Cape Education Department on the STEAMAC subjects offered in schools as per previous resolutions from the committee. I'm going to ask that the members just introduce themselves, and then I'll ask that the department introduce themselves, and then we can jump straight into the meeting with questions and answers afterwards. Please do stay online also so that we can deal with some minutes. Colleagues, for those who were on the study tour, you have received the respective report. However, our colleagues from the social cluster will only be able to join us at a later date. So we will be asking thus later that we just move the report to next week so that our social cluster colleagues are also able to be with us at the first part of that meeting. But I'll deal with that again at the end in relation to admin. But with that, members, if you can please introduce yourselves. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chair. Dan Plato.
Good afternoon, Chair. Phil and Christians.
Good afternoon, Chair. Chris Fry.
Good afternoon, Chair. Mesuli Kama.
Thank you so much. I don't see any other members on my dashboard. Ms. Hassan Musa, have we received any apologies?
No, Chair, none has been received.
Okay, no problem. Thank you so much. Colleagues, I'm just going to mute everyone quickly just so that the sound is a little bit louder. Mr. Mohammed, over to yourself and your team for introduction of the department. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chairperson and honourable members. So it's Harun Mohammed, Head of the Branch for Curriculum and Assessment. I'm Mr. Don Hariprasad, who is Acting Chief Director for Curriculum and Teacher Development. Dr. Glynis Schroeder, who is Acting Director for the Further Education and Training Band. Mr. Neil Simons, who coordinates all the technical subjects in the FET band. And Mr. Ashrik Don, who's been recently appointed in the Coding and Robotics section of the department. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We did receive the presentation, but you can jump straight into the presentation. And it's wonderful to see that you're also testing our IT abilities in the method of sending the presentation. Thank you so much.
So, Chairperson, I just want to check if the presentation is appearing.
Let's just give it a minute or so. Okay, it's not appearing on my side just yet. Perhaps unshare and try share again.
Okay, will do.
Perfect. It's sharing on our side. You can put it in presentation mode and then we AFIR away.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So good afternoon again, and thank you for the opportunity to present on this particular topic. The presentation outline is introduction and purpose, the WCD response, further elaboration on the context we find ourselves in, including the plan that we've been implementing so far, some current collaborations. The blended learning refers to some future focus planning, and then as per normal procedure, questions and comments. So in terms of the purpose, we just want to provide some background and with a particular focus on progress that we've made, some opportunities that have arisen, and also some of the challenges that we are experiencing in this particular work. We just want to indicate that we've been trying very hard to make sure that the plan is informed by the unemployment, particularly youth unemployment focus in Cape Town and in the Western Cape, because there's a lot of national information available. And often what happens is some of these plans respond to the national and forget that there is a provincial and local focus that needs to be in place. Also, We've kept the major economic sectors in the Western Cape in mind, and you'll see that we've tried quite hard to have a strong correlation between the subjects that we're offering and the economic sectors in which opportunities may be available in the future. On this slide, what we indicate is that the STEMAC program is part of a broader program that was initiated many years ago called 3 Streams, in which there is intention to increasingly shift the predominantly academic focus in our system to vocational and occupational. And then there's also something called a focus schools plan, which deserves a special discussion, and something called E-Cubed, which I'll also make a comment on towards the end. In the WCED annual performance plan, the following 2 statements appears. It says increase access, learner enrollment and performance in technical agriculture and vocational education in the Western Cape Education Department. And it has the intention of doubling the number of learners offering the technical and agricultural stream. So if I can just maybe take the extract from the APP and indicate that we, in 2018 and 19, the department established a baseline of 6%. And at that point in time, there was a projection that in 5 years' time, we would be able to get to 12%. But we can indicate that on that calculation, we are doing reasonably well, and we may want to recalculate in the next round of APP discussions. The next 2 slides are just to indicate that the work we're doing is backgrounded by a number of policy and legislative documents, just as reference. In terms of the current status, there are 23 technical schools in the Western Cape Education Department, plus 2 in the pipeline, Wynberg Boys High and Strand High. There are 30 focus schools. I'll say something about clarifying what we mean by focus schools later on, but just to indicate there are 7 math, science and technology focus schools, 3 business, commerce and management, 3 in the agricultural sphere, 4 in engineering, 3 in ICT, 5 in the arts, 2 in maritime and marine, and 3 in the services sector. We also have 26 schools of skills, which offer 21 subjects, which are different from the academic subjects in the mainstream schooling system. In terms of the technical direction subjects that we offer in the further education and training band, namely grades 10 to 12, there are some 10 subjects that we have introduced. In the last few years, through the national system, we have introduced a pilot in grade 8 and 9, in which schools have been given the opportunity to offer 1, but not more than 2 of 13 vocational and occupationally oriented subjects in the general education and training band. And then just in terms of volume for the moment, in grades 10 to 12, we have 5,849 learners presently enrolled in technical subjects, but that excludes the agricultural subjects and the arts, and later on we will present some of the detail. Moving to the plan, a couple of thrusts. So as I mentioned, the 3 streams and the focus schools, but spatial planning has come strongly into the discussion. We have discussed this with our districts to look at the spatial distribution of these schools in their district with a view to strengthening existing schools, and where budget allows for the development of new schools or refurbishing of existing schools which have the opportunity to be able to do that. We've also incrementally started introducing a multiple certification system, namely that as the learners leave the schooling system, they have the opportunity to complete an additional certificate, which enables them to have better opportunities in the employment market. This goes together with a look at the curriculum offerings. We've asked the schools and the districts to look at whether the curriculum package that they're offering is aligned with the opportunities that are available in their region. And obviously, if you're introducing subject with a practical component, then the pedagogy has to change. Moving on to the 3-stream model. The 3-stream model, as I mentioned earlier on, consists of the academic, vocational and occupational. As it currently stands, we have 96.6% of our learners in the academic stream, which is aimed at preparing learners for the general formative post-school processes once they leave school. In the vocational, The intention is to prepare learners for professional learning and work beyond post-school, and in the occupational to prepare learners particularly for the trades and artisanal type jobs as they move through the system. On this slide, we just wanted to indicate in terms of the conceptual work around this particular area, the three main pathways and how they would then articulate with post-school education and training. So in the academic stream, for example, they would go through to your higher education institutions and complete the degrees and move to those kinds of professions. In the vocational stream, it is more technically professionally oriented. And in the occupational stream, as I mentioned, it's more focused on the trades, the technicians and the operators. Moving on to implementation. So this is in the general education training band, grades R to 9. As I mentioned earlier on, in the pilot that we've introduced, there are 13 vocationally oriented subjects within the GET phase that have been piloted in 2021 and 2022. I'll come in a moment to the specific description of the subjects. And then in the case of the schools of skills, there are 26 schools and 21 subjects that we're offering in that pathway. And then we also do a lot of career information, advice and guidance from early on in the GET band to guide our learners to be able to make the right choices. There is currently also a pilot for the introduction of the general education certificate at the end of grade 9. It's been quite widely mentioned in the public domain. And there are 24 schools that are piloting at the moment, and the national plan is to introduce this for full introduction in 2024. In the 23 schools I've mentioned, there is a draft curriculum that has been implemented, and in the School of Skill in the last 4 years, we've been implementing the year 1 to 4 curriculum. In the further education and training band, we are in the process of introducing and offering vocational subject combinations, example, the BCM, Business, Commerce and Management, the Technical and the Arts, in order for the learners to progress through the FET phase into the appropriate post-school education and training system and then to the world of work. As I mentioned, these are the schools on the left-hand side that are classified as technical schools in the province. And then the subjects which they have opted to take as part of the pilot are listed in the succeeding columns. So I won't go through the detail, it's just all there for the reflection. In the case of the schools of skill, the next 2 slides provide us with the subjects that we are offering, and then the alignment between those subjects and their connection with FET or TVET. In other words, if a learner takes that subject, then is there space for them to continue in that specialization, either in the FET band or into a TVET college? The red markings indicate that in those cases, we do not as yet have the articulation. Some positive reflections on the work that we've done. So in the grade 8 pilot, as I mentioned, you can see some examples of the work that the learners have been able to produce. Looks very, very impressive, very exciting. The learners are very engaged in this kind of work. The next few slides cover the arts. So music is quite strong. We've conducted a couple of mass learner workshops, ICT development, agricultural management practices, sheep shearing, etc. Obviously, in order to take this work forward, we have to advocate quite strongly. And what we have identified is that because of the history of the South African schooling system, where there's a very strong emphasis on the academic, a lot of parents are resistant to send their children to technical, vocational, occupational, because it's considered to be of lower status. So we've started an incremental process of, changing the mindset in that regard. And as you can see on the slide, posters, skills competitions, videos. We've recently strengthened our maths and sciences strategy. We've done some pamphlets and started distribution of that. And then a lot of discussion on infrastructure planning and delivery for expansion with our sister branch planning, but also a lot of work with the Department of Agriculture and Economic Development and Tourism. And then on the next few slides are examples of the advocacy materials. So I'm not going to spend too much time on them. So you'll see, there's neat little descriptions on what the subject entails, etc. Some successes to date. Our team has been able to engage with all our districts, with principals, with teachers and officials on the work that we've been doing and where it's standing and what the likely prospects are. We have a task team within the WCED, which meets months once to deliberate on progress and challenges and obstacles. With regard to learning and teaching support material, the DBE developed material for a lot of this work. Our province then took responsibility for printing and distribution to the 23 pilot schools. We had to make a couple of adjustments on our information system, the CMS system, the back-end work to enable these new subjects or intended new subjects to be appropriately recorded and reported has also been completed, notwithstanding a couple of challenges that we had in the area. We've done a lot of orientation work with our core team, which involves a national training team, a lot of teacher development work as indicated and more forthcoming. And then the budget that has been allocated for this process has allocated the funds to schools to purchase material, utensils, etc. I mentioned something about the GEC, so I'll pass over that one. I've mentioned details about the pilot also, so I'll pass through that one as well. With regard to criteria, so if schools want to participate in this program, we've created a set of criteria as are listed on this slide: infrastructure, human resources, physical resources, conformation to standards and articulation to the FET. And if the school is not able to meet the requirements, then we don't include them in the process. I mentioned that one of the elements of this whole program of implementation of STEMAC and the 3 themes is focus schools. So focus schools are lead institutions in their field of specialization, and they obviously offer quality education to ensure excellence in the particular areas. Guidelines for the establishment of these have been presented at national level, and what we've done is we've used the organizing fields that are depicted on the slide as the criteria by which to choose and promote and support these focus schools. Okay, so the processes that we follow and still will be following is some schools are in the planning phase, some schools are in incubation, some are functional, and some are in the comprehensive phase. And you'll see on this slide that we've plotted all of these schools in their various stages of implementation on a map. The legend indicates the different fields. So blue, for example, stands for agriculture, and in your own time, if you're needing to or haven't done so already, you'll see arts and culture is yellow. So we've been able to plot, for purposes of better planning, the status of each of the schools. This is just a district description of the same that I've just mentioned before. So we've got similar for all 8 of our districts, and we have used this as a lever for effective planning with the districts. On this particular slide, I just want to indicate that our team has done extensive work on providing data. So I'll just maybe use the example that you see on the slide there. So if you take Alexander Sinton School, for example, we name the district, the EMIS number, the classification of the organizing field, so in this case, art and culture. Then we go on to indicate the subjects that are offered by that school and the current enrollment levels in each of those subjects in each of the grades. So every single school that I mentioned that are more than 56 or close on 60 schools, there is detailed data available. And then just to elaborate a little bit further, we've been able to plot them onto the graph as you see, and we are able to tell the effective contribution of the school percentage-wise to the province. So in this case, Joe Slovo School, for example, is a school that is offering the highest in the technical area. In the agricultural subjects, for example, Oakdale Landbouw School is offering 8.8% of the provincial contribution. So these are illustrative slides, and I won't go into too much of the detail. It's all available, has been shared with the districts and the schools concerned. In terms of current collaboration and support, working very closely with the Department of Economic Development and Tourism, we've been collaborating with a number of industry partners and CETAs to support the plan. So as it stands, there are a number of partnerships either agreed on or in process of being agreed on, but I'll just mention the 5 large players. So the first one is the Plumbing Industry Regulatory Board. Then we've got Agripedia, Golden Arrow, and NetBank, where we've got the largest number of proposed learner beneficiaries coming out of that, and obviously the teachers involved in that. I mentioned earlier on multi-certification. So there are a number of memorandum of agreements being finalized with CAD for All, which is in the ICT zone, Genesis, Adobe, driving licenses. Maybe just if I can say about Genesis, it involves digital literacy, coding and robotics, Microsoft, QuickBooks, quite a wide range of the ICT directed subjects. Then we've had discussions with our human resources section in order for additional posts to be created, because the supply we've got for teachers and subject advisors is quite an aging one, and we need to be replacing, and we do have a bit of a pressure to make sure that the available human resources are there in the schools to be able to offer these. Working with our Teaching and Leadership Institute, we are busy working on a comprehensive teacher supply utilization and development plan. And then I mentioned some points about the infrastructure already, a discussion with our planning branch and related departments on making sure that the equipment, the specialist rooms and other facilities are available for implementation. In terms of next steps, we've started the process of getting the districts to work with us in the spatial planning. Implementation of the focus schools and the STEAMAC plan as indicated earlier. And then just maybe to highlight a point I made earlier on about getting the schools to re-examine their curriculum package and to reposition appropriately in relation to the economic opportunities that are already existing or are likely to exist. And so you'll see the phrase economic action zones mentioned there, that alignment. And then the need for virtual learning spaces. So I think as members will know, COVID did catapult us into the digital space much more strongly. And so we've started exploring those possibilities. And I'll just share this with you quickly to indicate that we've started looking at what schools of the future might look like, different forms and modes of delivery. And maybe I should just mention here that the Geographical Technical School looks like a very good model for us to look at for many, many more schools of the future. So those are just illustrations. On this particular slide, we just wanted to indicate the infrastructure and funds and resources that have been made available to the schools and the total number of learners in each of the organizing fields. So a lot of detail there, which I'm sure may come up in question time. Moving on to coding and robotics. So maybe by way of introduction, just to indicate that this is not a fully implemented project as yet. It is a startup project. It's in pilot phase at the moment. And just to say that, often in the public domain, there's a debate around we're struggling to get our reading and calculation right. Why are we introducing coding and robotics? So just to indicate that we've done a lot of deep analysis and research on the area, and the skills that are embedded in coding and robotics are clearly relevant, and we provide some background to that. So just maybe on a high level description, currently there are 6,000 software development jobs advertised in LinkedIn, and about 3,538 on PNet. But there's a lack of candidates with the suitable skills available to apply for these jobs. And so although the fourth industrial revolution is still on a smaller scale in terms of presence in our country, it does have a presence and it does have a space for receiving attention. And for that reason, we are proceeding with getting prepared. In terms of the landscape, there is a draft coding and robotics curriculum that has been developed by the national system, and our team has been playing a very strong role in the design and structuring of that work. I'll just share some detail around that. So in our province, there are 211 schools as we speak that have been involved in all three phases as indicated here in the pilot. To share with you some detail around that. So on this slide is the district description, the distribution of the schools per district. And then I'm just going to move towards conclusion by indicating some of the work that we've done. So the subject advisors involved have been attending a number of courses. I won't go into the detail, but it's fairly extensive. We've got a provincial task team which has conducted some work as indicated there, and we've been working with UNISA also on teacher development initiatives. The slide also gives further indication on the training that we've conducted in foundation phase, intermediate phase, and the setting up of microbit clubs, and some training sessions that are going to be conducted as we move further forward. This slide is maybe just important to mention that because this is a new subject, there's an extensive amount of work that we've had to do to explain. So our team has opted to call it the demystification program, so that the education community is not afraid of something new that is coming into the system. We've been working quite closely with the Cape Town Science Centre, their REACH program, and out of that, there are a number of clubs that have been established, and schools are invited to register to set up these clubs, to have a discussion and to see what they can implement even before the curriculum is being implemented. So out of that, 500 kits and guides have been developed and distributed into the system. On this slide are the numbers of the number and categories of committees that we've set up. So at head office, we've got a steercom for the process, a head office management committee, a provincial steering committee, district coding and robotics committees. So it's quite a vibrant community that we've established. This is the enabling environment. So in a previous or in another presentation, we have done a presentation on the e-learning program in the department, just to say that that serves as a backbone for taking this work, because the coding and robotics does involve connectivity and equipment to be able to do the work. Some successes and challenges. So I think WCED is the first department to appoint 2 Deputy Chief Education Specialists for coding and robotics, and Mr. Ashrik Don is with us in this meeting. Ms. Matilda Botha is the foundation phase appointee. I mentioned the development and manufacture of 500 cost-effective robotic kits and establishing the coding and robotic clubs network as part of that process. And then the orientation I've mentioned already, the committees I've mentioned already, and also just to indicate that to the extent possible, we've tried to make the work as cross-directed as possible. So as many of the directors that are most affected by this work are in a matrix team to do the work. Some challenges that we're experiencing. The draft curriculum that was developed at national level was not approved by Umalusi. Umalusi has given us comments for revision, and that work is happening as we speak. And because the curriculum is not yet gazetted, we are, because of procurement procedures, not able to allocate from our Math, Science and Technology grant any further budget to this particular program. And then the quality of internet connection will affect what we need to do, because the kits need to function in both online and offline environments. The coding and robotics is expensive, and so we did do a budget projection, and it is clearly unrealistic to do everything that we would like to do or the team would like to do, so that there are ongoing discussions about what is practicable in what we can actually implement. Okay, and then as we mentioned, for teacher professional development, it's a new subject, so it means the whole constellation of systems would need to be set up in order for universities to train the teachers, for ongoing professional development for those who are in the schools and will be having to service this particular subject. Okay, so what is needed for success? Curriculum needs to be finalized and gazetted. The accompanying policies and guidelines will be and need to be put in place. The LTSM, continued professional development of teachers as well as subject advisors, appointment possibly of more district subject advisors, enhancement of the advocacy program, funding models as I indicated, and the extent of the budget. Just to end off, so the national department, the discussion so far are indicating that we should be aiming to implement the introduction of the new subject by the beginning of next year. And our preliminary calculations are saying that that looks like it's not going to be possible. So we are awaiting and participating in the national decision making, and based on that, we will then adjust our plan. But our team is indicating that notwithstanding the decision that gets taken, we will continue to have adjusted plans should the implementation schedule that was initially thought of not be possible. In conclusion, I think we can safely say, relative to resources and other circumstances, our team has done a rugged body of work based on the SMART principle. Our sense is that the plans can deliver more. It is dependent on a number of factors, as I've mentioned in the challenges section. We are continuing to engage with all interested parties to support this drive. And in many of our presentations, we're saying that with a resource enhancement injection, it is possible to do more with expansion, but we are realistic and practical, and we will take it step by step to be taken further on. Chair and honourable members, I hope that was useful. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you so much. Colleagues, I'm going to open up for questions now. Okay, I see Member Syed's hand. Any other hands? Okay, Member Karma, and then I'll go after Karma, this none after Member Karma. Thank you.
Can I come in, Chair?
Yes, please proceed. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chairperson, and my greetings to the team from WCED. Apologies, I arrived a little bit late in the meeting, but just a couple of questions. I mean, starting off on, basically, I mean, first wanted to get a sense, basically, just to know what is the breakdown of the technical and focus schools per district and circuit, if you could get that. And how many of these are particularly focused on the farming sector, you know, and are in farming communities. I just wanted that sense, and then whether the opening of technical schools has led to or will most likely lead to the closure of schools in the province, the closure of non-technical schools. Can I go on to the next slide, or must I? Because I've just got one more question on slide 13. That was for slide 11.
I think ask all your questions finished so that the presenter is able to assist you better.
Okay.
Thank you.
So then on slide 13, if the department could basically further explain what is meant by spatial planning and curriculum better alignment plan. I just wanted to get to that. And then slide number 14, my final one, the standing committee recently visited Brazil, where we saw how vocational and technical education forms a major part of the curriculum. Just wanted to get a sense based on that, what plans are there to make vocational and technical education a central part of our education system in the province? How and when will we improve on the 1.7% for vocational education? And when will we achieve the goal of 40% academic and 60% vocational? Thank you.
Thank you so much. Member Karma.
Thank you very much, Chairperson, and let me welcome the presentation. Chair, one question that I want to have first is around the criteria that is used for schools to participate, because I see there one of the requirements is now in terms of your STEMEC is that you must, it looks also in terms of your physical resources. Now, I want to understand as to what are the department's plans to help other schools to meet these requirements, as we understand that there are physical resources such as that they would not qualify if they were to apply to participate in these in the STEMEC projects. The other question that I have around your coding and robotics is just an understanding as to, will then the criteria that applies generally in your STEMEC be the same criteria that is used to choose, that was used per se to choose the schools that are participating in your pilot projects? Because I see that there's quite a concentration in the metro than schools that you would find in the rural parts of our province. Now, the last question, Chair, that I have is since the curriculum itself is not yet gazetted, I just want to get an understanding as to how is the department funding this pilot project. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you so much. I see Member Christian's hand, and then I'll put my questions in the second round.
Thank you, Chair. I'll ask more questions later on, but just, a very good presentation. I just want to know, and this is a question that comes on a long time, that, of course, when you look at technical schools and vocational schools, if you look at technical schools especially, there's not enough room for pupils to apply and to get into those technical schools. So how is that managed? And just the other question that I'm thinking about is, I still get learners that, they go to a specific area of school, but they cannot get the subjects required to do what they need to do. That is a big problem in communities, but even a bigger problem in communities is also that when you walk and you visit schools and you speak to students, matriculants, they don't know what do they want to become. They just, going to school for the sake of school, and there's no purpose. So I just want to ask those questions because, some of our people need in technical schools, they cannot get into technical schools. Some of our learners live in an area and they don't have access to study what they want to become because those subjects are not offered. And thirdly, they go through the stream, and when they get to matric, they don't know where they are going to end up one day. Just so general questions, because I now saw the presentation and it's nice, but the stuff that I'm mentioning now is what's happening on the ground. So I just want to throw that in the start. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Mr. Mohammed, if you and your team can take those questions, and then I'll open up for the second round after that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair and honourable members. I'll just do a quick overview, and then there are team members. So Mr. Hadi Prasad can possibly lead after I've come in. So on the issue of districts and circuits, I'm just checking if the slide is appearing on the screen again.
Yes, we can see it, the one that says WCD.
Yeah, okay, so that's the distribution that we've got. As soon as I respond just generically to all the questions, Mr. Hari Prasad and Mr. Simons, who are the day-to-day operational managers, will elaborate a little bit further. And I'm sure they will then respond to the agricultural focus that was asked in that question. As far as I'm aware, the opening of technical schools leading to the closure of existing academic schools has not featured in the discussion, but my colleagues can correct me if I don't have the correct interpretation of that one. What we've generally been doing is schools that have the potential to be offering these subjects. We support those schools to be refurbished, etc., and then have the necessary human resources and so on. And then in terms of the technical vocational split, so we were able to do some analysis that I think I did mention earlier on. These are the figures that we've got on the split that we have. So the data that we've got at the moment is that in the Western Cape, 96.6% of our learners are in the academic enrollment process, and then the other two split between 1.7 and 1.7. The 60-40 split that was mentioned is a figure that appears in the national concept document, and we are busy applying our minds on how long it will take us to get to that particular point. So possibly at the next presentation that we will make to yourselves, we will bring to you a year-by-year breakdown on the analysis that we're able to do. On the question of assisting schools, Mr. Simons, I think, will be best positioned to answer that particular one, but there was a question about the criteria. So let me just go back to that particular slide. Oh, I seem to have missed the order of the slides. I'll just find it quickly. Oh, there we go. Slide number 38. So up until now, this is what we've been doing. So when a school indicates interest or we as officials identify a school that may have the potential, these are the 5 main criteria that we use. And then if the schools do have the relevant infrastructure, the human resources, etc., we then identify that school and then ensure that they get additional budget, resources, equipment, and so on. Mr. Don will, Don will respond to the selection criteria for the schools that were selected for the pilot schools. And then Mr. Simons will address the question on the room to apply and how that process is managed. If I can just make a comment on the question on the careers. So we do an extensive amount of career guidance, but our data is confirming that there are quite extensive numbers of learners who are not sure about what they need to do. And that's where we think potentially the general education certificate may be helpful, because it has got built into it something called an inclinations assessment, which allows the system, or which can allow the system, to identify what is the talent, the inclination talent that that particular child has, and then for the system to then guide that learner into the direction into which they are most suited. But my colleagues may want to comment a little bit more about that. So I'm going to hand over to Mr. Hariprasad now. I'll bring the slide up on the district distribution and the agricultural focus. Over to you, Don.
Thank you, Mr. Mohammed, and good evening, good afternoon, honorable members. I think the first one I'd like to talk to is around the issue of the notion of the closing of schools because of the fact that we may want to expand technical vocational education. This is not going to be a resultant implication. We need to understand that majority of our secondary schools were offering some form of technical education in almost every school. And in the past, lots of these were closed. So in terms of the expansion of the program, we are looking at what the current infrastructure is available in most schools, and they would be allowed to then reintroduce these subjects, pending obviously the refurbishment of the current and existing infrastructure and the resourcing of those schools. So we don't anticipate, schools closing if we have to shift from academic to the vocational occupational. The concept of spatial planning, a nice question. Perhaps just to give you a good overview, spatial planning is of critical importance if we're really wanting to make schooling relevant. Now, in spatial planning, what we're trying to do, and we sensitized all the districts, is that we need to be able to reposition the schools in a district where access to the programs and based on the learner's interest and aptitude profile and future career aspirations should be accessed in a geographical locus. So if you look at a district, there's different circuits. And in the district, we're looking at what is it that that particular district provides for in post-school opportunities. I'll just cite an example. If we take the Hermanus Stace-Bar area, we've been asked to look at what is it that we must be able to provide a new secondary school for in that region. So what we've done is that we looked at the opportunities that exist in that region. Now you'll notice it's largely a area where many of the people living in that space are either holiday makers or lots of people come and retire there. And there's a host of a coastline that has not been maximized. So what we're looking at is providing in that particular region a school that will be offering, for example, the services subjects that will promote the hospitality and tourism. We're wanting to promote some technical vocational for the purposes of having to be able to look at all of the opportunities that will exist in terms of maintenance of infrastructure, etc. Then we're looking at the agricultural space, and it's going to be looking at how do we maximize the opportunities from the ocean economy and introducing new agricultural technologies, particularly around propagating using aquaponics as a means of production. So if you look at spatial planning in that context, it then means that we have engaged with all the districts, asking them to look at the district and be able to look at how do we, based on the socioeconomic conditions and the current economic activities. Mr. Mohammed mentioned the issue of economic action zones, engagement and interactions with the local municipalities to look at what is it that they're trying to do to attract businesses and investment in the area. For example, in Ceres, we heard that there is going to be a massive investment around solar panels or solar electrical renewable energy. Now, we wanted to look at Ceres Secondary School with a view to be able to introduce the agricultural stream there for the beneficiation of the citrus industry. But then again, we now realize that we need to be able to promote some kind of technical vocational programs at Ceres Secondary. So that's what spatial planning is about. It is a big and comprehensive approach, and what we've done is engage the districts, indicating that they need to contact the local municipality, all the local industries, etc., with a view to be able to promote what is going to happen and what kind of subject offerings we must offer in that space, so learners would be able to come out of school and benefit from their post-school socio-economic opportunities. So that's so much for spatial planning, but there's a lot more I can talk about it. But I think you got the gist of what we're asking for. And I believe that you are a very critical, important stakeholder in having to be able to promote that, because lots of the communities are, like Mr. Mohammed mentioned, are reluctant to want to shift towards more responsive curriculum offerings that will be benefiting the learner in terms of their personal purpose and what happens post-schooling. The other point that was mentioned by one of the other honorable members was how do we look at, I think it was Honorable Christian mentioned, how do we look at excess? Now, if one has to come back to the point I mentioned earlier, if we have a limited number of technical vocational high schools, we can only expand based on human resources and other infrastructure and other financial resources that will be required. And we therefore progressively expanding. And we got a range of different initiatives that we can show you. But look at all of these information that we provided, you'll start to see that we adding subjects to schools, we're repositioning certain schools with a view to be to enable learners to have a broader access. Now, yes, there is limitations in terms of numbers because we still have to comply with workshop occupational safety requirements. The technical vocational education is expensive. And if we need to move towards that, then I believe that we need to look at a substantive injection of capital and other financial resources into that. The future plans, I think, in terms of career path, Mr. Mohammed mentioned that. And the last one is around the criteria. I think Mr. Simons will give you further information. But what we're also looking at, wherever there's a potential and engagement with schools by the different districts and the different stakeholders, like we said, in repositioning schools, we would then be able to add the infrastructure, provide the human resources. For example, we're providing additional posts to many of the schools where we're introducing the subject next year, for example. We have already secured the post. We've already provided, in some cases, the refurbishment of the workshops. And we also then equipping all of those workshops using the funding that we have. So it's quite a comprehensive plan. I'll stop there, Mr. Mohammed. I hope I've answered all the questions, the relevant ones.
Through the chair, thank you very much, Mr. Hari Prasad. Mr. Simons, would you like to add?
Thank you, Mr. Mohammed. I just want to add on the question about the agricultural schools and the spread across the province. For the house, most of our agricultural schools sits within Cape Winelands. For the mere fact that it's the rural area and some of it in the Eden district as well. Not a lot of agricultural schools within the peninsula, but I can share that we do have schools offering agricultural technology and agricultural management within Metro East and South, with most of our peninsula schools offering agricultural sciences, especially in Metro East and in Cape Winelands. With regards to our technical schools, the more of the technical schools is focused within the peninsula, whereas I think Metro East consists of the most technical schools within the peninsula. With regards to infrastructure, I need to mention that the requirements, especially the physical infrastructure for the specific schools, needs to be in place, obviously, to offer a subject when it expands within the vocational area or in the vocational space. Keeping in mind that the safety, the OZ Act, protect all our learners currently in schools with regards to that. But I can share more detail with physical documents being shared via email, Mr. Mohammed. Thank you.
Thank you very much again, Chair, Mr. Simons. Mr. Ashley Don, would you like to say something about the selection of the coding and robotics schools for the pilot?
Thank you, Mr. Mohammed. Thank you, Chair and honorable members. On the criteria that was used for the pilot schools, this is a DBE pilot project. In total, there is 1,000 schools nationally. The criteria that was used, I think the first and most important is infrastructure. Does the school have the necessary infrastructure, which include the internet access, the computer labs, the WCD provide? It was one of the main rationales that was used in the selection. Then also whether it was the engagement with the districts to investigate and look and recommend some of the schools in their districts that they think that they had the potential to partake in this project. The other rationale that was used was the quintile spread to make sure all schools are included and are part of this project. Then one important bit is the SMT, the willingness of the principal and the management of the school to be part of this project, because there's a lot of learning that needs to happen from the teacher side as well, and to see where they can fit this program in within their current curriculum. That's in short regarding the criteria, Mr. Mohammed. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Don. Thank you very much, Chair. We return to you.
Thank you so much. Because I moved my questions to the second round, I'm going to take the opportunity to ask some questions first, but the members can in the meantime put their hands up for the second round. I wanted to find out, you mentioned that obviously there might need to be a capital injection if we're going to have subjects such as coding and robotics and so forth in our schools, and if we're going to be focusing on many more technical subjects. So my question is, how much capital are we going to need? What is the amount of money that if we had to go from 500 pilot schools that we want for the 2023-2024 year, which is in the one slide, how much do we need to expand it throughout the province? Okay, so that's my first question. Then I wanted to find out the slide that mentioned that WCED wants to establish the 500 Robotics and Codings Club. I just saw the date 2023-2024 there, but is it the financial year 2023-2024, or is it over the calendar years of 2023-2024? If I can just have some clarity about the rollout of that program. And then I do know that coding, for example, helps actually children with mathematics. And something that I feel that we've picked up is a lot of children are either not taking mathematics, or they are being discouraged from taking mathematics, or they're simply not achieving, obviously, the marks to do mathematics. The problem with this is a lot of programs that one can go study, whether it is TVET, or university or whatever it is, doesn't matter. Many of those programs require mathematics. Even in some companies and work environments, even if you don't have those studies, they want mathematics. I cannot imagine someone becoming a boilermaker without mathematics. I cannot imagine an electrician becoming an electrician without mathematics. And if we're going to be capacitating our economy with people who are able to have those skills, people who are likely able to also be entrepreneurs, then they need mathematics. So what is our plan to encourage the uptick in mathematics, and can we perhaps even use coding as almost a precursor to this, given some of what studies regarding coding says? And then you mentioned that the REACH program developed and distributed 500 guides, and I'm not sure if this was directly relating to the coding and robotics. If you could just clarify that for me. And then I think it was slide 71, where you mentioned 1,297 out of 1,523 schools have broadband. And on the same slide, it said 237 stipend alternatives. I just want to make sure I understand that correctly. Are you giving schools extra money where broadband has not been installed yet? If we can just maybe get some clarity on that slide. Thank you. I'm going to take some extra hands now, given that majority of my questions were clarity seeking anyway. Member Christians, you can go.
No, Chair, just this question, exactly what you asked. I've asked previously that there is children that want to maybe become, like you know, say the electrician or whatever, but in the area they stay, there's not that option because there's no pure maths offered. And that is a big problem, and that's why a lot of children don't know, they're confused what they're going to become, because if they take math lit, they cannot enter into whatever they're thinking of, a medical doctor, a lawyer, all of that. And that was the question around that. So what do you say? You said coding is so important and it helps with maths, but some of our children are totally lost because there's no opportunities. And the same, like I said earlier, when it comes to technical schools, some of our children cannot just get into technical schools. It's not offered, it's not close by. They cannot get into proper schooling and they cannot, their career path is limited because of what's available to them. And that is the question I'm asking. In townships, the career opportunities is limited because of not getting into technical schools or where they can have subject choices to follow a specific career path. I just wanted some clarity on that. That wasn't answered in the first round. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you so much. So Member Christians also wants to know, how are we going to bring the mathematics to a higher level in terms of our schools, which also speaks again to the question, how much? And I think I'm probably speaking but from a budget perspective in that regard, so that we know what is the future amount that we are working with and or per financial year. Thank you. Mr. Mohammed.
Thank you very much, Chair, and again for those questions. So my figures may be slightly wrong. I'll just, as I said earlier, I'll cover headline responses, and then the coding and robotics one, mainly Mr. Ashrik Don can come in again, and then I'll make a couple of comments about the maths, but I'm sure the FET team would want to comment on that as well. So I remember an application coming from the directorate asking for R500 million to enable all the coding and robotics that we're wanting to implement in the schools. And SG Walters almost reprimanded me for even bringing it up to him. I'm saying this slightly facetiously, but the reality of it is that if we really want to implement it in the best possible model, it's extremely expensive. But Chair, what we can do is the draft budget that we drew up, we'll be more than willing to share because it does a detailed breakdown on all the items and the costing. Mr. Don will respond to the others, but just on the issue of maths, if I can make a comment and say that very unfortunately, we are experiencing something called math shedding, or a drift away from maths to maths literacy. Mr. Hari Prasad and his team, I know, have been doing a little bit of information gathering on it, so he'll speak a little bit more about that. But what seems to be happening is that because some of the courses that the learners are applying for in the university does not require maths, as entrance to it. So for example, a Bachelor of Arts degree doesn't require a maths pass. They're choosing Maths Lit. And so that drift is happening. The other cause that we've identified is that there is a shortage of maths teachers in certain parts of the system. But as I mentioned in one of the slides, we did do a launch this year of what we're calling the strengthening of the maths strategy of the department, because we've always had a maths strategy, but we're recognizing that there was a need for revamp. So there's a number of approaches that we've been using to try and manage that particular one. So as I said, the FED team has been working on that one. If I can maybe respond to the question of access that was mentioned and the maths that was required and so on. So on the calculations that we've done, as you can see in the presentation that we presented, with the resources and capacity, we're doing relatively well. But if you look at the needs in the system far exceed what we're able to do with the resource that we have. And that's why this area of our work is so important. And so there's been a discussion about, the possibility of at least one more technical or technically oriented school in each of the districts. That would be first prize. But Mr. Salih Abrams in the planning branch, his retort to us is, can we afford it? And it's quite expensive to start a new school. So there are quite a number of challenges, and my impression is that immediately the question that Mr. Christians has asked, we will not be able to have the best possible response. And as our colleagues have been indicating, but there are processes underway for incremental increase in the access to these processes. In the earlier part of the presentation, I made reference to Geographical Technical School and why it may be important, maybe just to share something about that particular school. That school has got 60% private sector and community contribution towards the establishment and running of the school, 40% government. It runs the three streams very effectively, probably one of the best we've got going in the province. And it looks like a good model to be pursuing, given the resource constraints and other challenges that we face in the system. And so our thinking is, the more schools we can get based on that model established, the better it will be. In other words, where government doesn't have the funds, should we not be leveraging from community and private sector combined and come up with models that can give us the necessary access opportunities. And just lastly, to indicate that there is a program that I mentioned right at the beginning, but we weren't sure about the time we had in this particular presentation, called eCubed. eCubed standing for Entrepreneurship, Employability, and Lifelong Education. We have got a pilot presence in about 500 schools. We started in 2018 with about 20 schools. And basically the program aims at using the subjects which lend themselves to this kind of work, namely economic and management sciences in the general education and training band and life orientation, some parts of the languages and even some parts of the mathematics curriculum, and then in the FET band, the business subjects, to provide the learners with opportunities to be aware of and gain practical experience in the futures that they will be going into, particularly the world of work, and particularly in the case of learners who are not likely to find a job, given that our economy, the projections are telling us that the economy is not going to be expanding wide enough to be able to absorb the full spectrum of learners leaving our schooling system at the moment. So perhaps that can be a presentation for another time. It is in pilot stage. It is also a little bit like the coding and robotics. It's a slightly different approach to the implementation of education. So it's not moving at the speed that we would like it to move at, but it does have some potential. The program is backgrounded by more than 7 years of research that was done by an interprovincial team. which looked at similar experiences across the globe. And as I indicated, that it's being implemented in the country at the moment. With that said, Chair, with your permission, if I can hand over to Mr. Don first and then Mr. Hariprasad to follow.
Thank you.
Mr. Don, on the question of the 500 robotics and the years.
Thank you,
yep.
Mr. Mohammed. Okay, I will address the 500 clubs from REACH, the Cape Town Science Project. That Cape Town Science Project, that 500, it's not 500 clubs, it's two different projects. The Cape Town Science Centre developed, with collaboration with WC, a specific robotic kit that is tailored to fit also in the technology, address tinkering as well as robotics. So that was developed with collaboration WCD and Cape Town Science Centre. There were 500 robotic kits developed. Of that 500 kits, 20 kits were delivered per district for capacity building for teachers, and the remainder of that 500 is still with Cape Town Science Centre, which they intend to use for the 48 clubs that they are planning to establish, focusing on the primary schools. That is the Cape Town Science Centre project. The other 500, the next one, the WCD projected, the one that we want, is also 500 clubs. That 500 clubs, and Chair mentioned the rollout plan. Now, there was a tender process we're currently in the tender process. A submission has been approved for the 500 clubs, and that submission is about 51 million just for that clubs. So the resources to establish that specific clubs is focusing on foundation phase, intermediate phase, as well as the senior phase, grade 8s and 9s. Is all three phases. They're seeing that the tender process is about now 12 months. So we're looking at delivery stage for next year, 2023, by October and November, if all things went well, and then implementation in a rollout will then eventually happen in 2024. That is that process. But in between that process, this is where the magic needs to happen, is getting the teachers ready to work on these systems. And that is currently also in planning phase. That's on those 2 points. The maths part, very interesting, because this subject is based on computational thinking, coding and robotics. The methodology and the process used is computational thinking and the engineering design process. So through developing computational thinking, you develop logical thinking. And this is where also maths comes in. And it has been proven that through coding and robotics and developing computational thinking, maths also improve because learners learn how to solve a problem. And I think that is what is needed currently, is that learners don't know how to take a problem and dissect it, make it smaller, analyze it, find a solution, test it, and create. Through coding and robotics, they get that platform and the environment to experiment, to test, to work, and it can be incorporated within all the other subjects, within maths, within science, because there's sensors, there's building. It's a very interesting space we're moving in, where our kids can get exposure to many of these new technologies. That's why we're so excited for the 500 clubs, starting from extramural, and then infuse it within the curriculum once the curriculum gets gazetted. There's a question on maths. There was a question also on the infrastructure, enabling environment. Currently on the broadband, 1,297 schools. The numbers here might be a bit different now because we are currently already busy with upgrading the infrastructure. So the last time I had this slide, it's 1,297 schools that do have WCG schools internet access. The 237 schools might be less, but those schools, there is a stipend the school will receive to get internet access to. There's a money, that stipend they must use to buy internet, to talk to a provider to get internet, at least for the office space, at least facilitate the school as well. Now, with this process currently, I know our e-learning directorate is busy with a project to look at these specific schools and providing some sort of infrastructure technology to these schools. But that will be the e-learning directorate can get more info, give more information regarding that project. Chair, Mr. Arun, I think it is all the questions that I covered.
Thank you very much, Mr. Don. If I can maybe just quickly before the FETG comes in. So, Chair, the 237 schools are the schools which have not yet been touched in terms of the rollout of the broadband for a variety of reasons, because of the system in the province. And so the stopgap measure is to give them a stipend in order for them to have the access to the internet. Thank you very much. Don Hariprasad, over to you and any member of your team.
Thanks. Perhaps just I forgot to mention in the previous round that in terms of the expansion of access to agricultural management practices and the technologies, what we're doing is we're promoting the modern agricultural techniques. So you find that we, over the last few years, including currently, we averaging about 6-7 schools a year, where we're providing them with greenhouses and, chicken farms and, things like that, so where they can start to do smaller agricultural technologies that doesn't require massive land areas like the Lanbo, Oakdale and Hoërskool Lanbo in the winelands. Because we don't expose the learners to the agricultural technologies in the metros, it will, to a large extent, not be skilling learners for the new agricultural technologies. That's where the skill sets are required. I mean, you could even set up a hydroponics plant in your garage and you'll produce a hell of a lot of, plants and other fruits, etc., and make a lot of money. I mean, if you look at those are the new technologies, and the productivity levels are far greater, and the actual production is even more of a better quality. So that's what we're promoting in expanding agricultural sector. I think the issue around the capital required, I don't want to mention this, but in the main, we have a limited amount of money that we're attracting from the infrastructure grant to enable us to provide the additional workshops and resources that are required. However, if we have to expand exponentially to meet the 40-60 that one of the honorable members mentioned, then it would require a far more substantive injection annually. But one needs to be cautious that you cannot, in a system like ours, noting that we need to change it. You don't want to go into a situation where you go and spend money in one part and you don't have the resources in another, and then you have a problem in implementation. So that's why if you look at those criteria, you got infrastructure, you got human resources, you got equipment and materials. So if you don't have all of that in the mix, the chance, and even teacher development and training and support, then you're going to have a problem. Then you're going to find us coming back to this forum, and you'll be, complaining to me and telling me, Don, why is these things failing? And we're not having these things at the level and standard that we require. So we need to look at the capacity of state to be able to expand. And I think, we cautiously, incrementally building the capacity. We are asked for additional posts. We got some additional posts, for example, in support functions. We just appointed 2 other senior curriculum planners to help us in the technology and technical vocational space. The other issue that comes up in the capital required is that we also need to look at the practical component of these subjects, and they require resources for the practical. It's an examination requirement. And what we have done is we managed to secure, and I think we're the only province in the country that provides a per capita allocation per learner for all the subjects where the learner, or all the learners that offer a subject with a practical component. Now that's more broader than just the technical subjects. So we're giving the school this money for them to buy the resources, and that at the moment, an additional funding required annually. We had about 3 million. We progressively moved that. Now we're needing about 12 million annually. And if we're going to go and expand, that particular allocation will also increase in terms of per capita. So that's enabling, because that's what attracts the schools from offering it. Many of the schools are not offering these subjects because of the cost. And once you start to, factor in lots of our no fee-paying schools, etc., including schools that are fee-paying schools, then learners shift away from that because schools are asking for additional allocations for them to offer these subjects, becoming more expensive. The notion of the notion of vocational orientation and technical subjects, we need to also look at our current plans are only focusing on those subjects that we mentioned to you, the technical subjects. But if we take computer applications, technology, and IT, we take the services field like hospitality and consumer studies, we take all the art subjects, design, visual arts. If you look at all of them, many of them have a direct link into a occupational or a vocational program. And if you start to look at the number of learners that are offering those subjects in the province, and if we include that in the definition, then Mr. Mohammed and honorable members, that 3% that we mentioned is not going to be what we're looking at. I mean, there's going to be a hell of an increase in the percentage. So we need to be able to, and that's what we're advocating as a department. How do we ensure that the rules of combination of subjects that the learners offer lead them into the skill sets that future career paths offer? I'll cite an example. Let's take a learner takes design, computer applications technology, and engineering graphics and design as 3 subjects. This combination of skill set that learner comes out with to be able to meet the expectations of, for example, the wholesale and retail sector, in terms of the different opportunities that are existing, particularly in online shopping, etc., is myriad. So what we're doing is basically, for example, we're talking now to the PEPCO group. We're talking to the Lewis group. They are all in partnership with us. We're not mentioning it in the presentation, but we already engaging with them on what is it that we can do. For example, in the business process outsourcing, which is the highest creation of employment, what is it that we're doing with them in our schooling sector? We didn't tell you all those yet, but there's so much that we're promoting in our space with a view to be able to ensure the principle of multiple certification leads to learners coming out that will enable them to immediately benefit from the post-school opportunities. The other issue around mathematics, one must advise you that all schools that are offering the technical vocational programs have to offer technical maths or mathematics as compulsory subjects, or they offer physical science or technical science. So that is where the policy enables us to do that. Yes, we are making strides. There were challenges in terms of the performance of technical maths and technical sciences. Because of a policy challenge, we managed to get that right. And from last year, we saw a massive increase in the performance rates in those subjects. So notwithstanding the fact that we have those subjects, the issue that we're facing is the recognition and of those subjects by higher education institutions. And that issue is also been tabled, by the National Department and including the engagement with the Department of Higher Education. The other area that we wanting to inform you is that we believe that the provincial strategy that we launched for mathematics, enhancing the math strategy, we're making a significant investment and improvement and effort in grades 8 and 9. We have a partnership with Siabula that has made through the Cape Town Science Center. In that collaboration, they brought to us the Siabula Maths and Science program free to all our schools. What we're doing is, unfortunately, we currently finding that it's only available in English, so we're supporting that drive and that organization to ensure that it's translated in Afrikaans. I can honestly tell you that the programs there is so lucrative in terms of the diagnostics and also support for learners, that learners doing grades 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12 maths and physical science can have access to that program free. It's also zero rated, and therefore we're hoping that that will take traction. Our districts have already started, and some of them have initiated a winter school program, for example, for grade 8 and 9 maths learners. Some of them were challenged to implement in the July holidays, but there is a definite effort making learners to be supported in grade 8 and 9 so that they succeed in grade 10. We also have a revision program through the telematics broadcasting program for 16 different subjects, including maths and science, in grade 10, 11, and 12. So we have, done, I don't know, but I just want to indicate to you as honorable members that the program managers have worked tirelessly to try to enhance mathematics performance. The challenge we're facing is that the learners change the subject, and that is where, if possible, you can help us, is to create a greater community awareness where, parents come and ask the learners to change the subject because they fail, rather than making efforts to work harder in the subject. I mean, for example, we have like about 3,000-4,000 subject changes in grade 11 mathematics to maths lit in grade when the learner enters the grade 12 year. That itself tells us that, look, here we are, we're promoting the numbers, but then eventually we get a high subject change in those 2 years. So we start off, let's say, with a certain number of, let's say you're starting off with 20,000 learners in grade 10. By the time you reach grade 12, it drops down to 8,000-10,000. Now, we got no control over that, and that's the challenge that we're facing. And what we're trying to do is to sensitize the system to ensure that the parent and the child understands how much of the career opportunities will not be available to the learner if they switch from maths to maths lit. And what is it that they need to do to enhance and take over and use the support programs that we have to enable them to succeed. I think there, Mr. Mohammed and honorable members, the last point that Mr. Honorable Member Christian mentioned was about the issue of, the geographical locus of schools, and, lots of our learners don't have the options available to them. I think in the main, what is happening is that the schools, and now the kind of capital investment and all of that we need to make to enable the system to expand access. And unless we progressively make these things available, we would be facing the same challenge. But I also want to indicate that we also advocating to learners the opportunities that exist in the FET colleges, and for them to take on those opportunities after they reach grade 9. And that articulation framework that Mr. Mohammed presented to you, that graph that shows the GET band and articulating in the academic, vocational, occupational pathways, is what we're promoting. So wherever learners cannot access a program in schools, then the opportunity lies for them to access it to the FET colleges. And maybe we also have a career guidance program that we offer, different times of the year for grade 8 and 9s and for grade 12s. We also received some support from 2 of the CETAs to help us to promote a career guidance program in our schools for this current year. But again, we're doing all of that. But at the end of the day, learners and parents make decisions that we can't control. And so it's a catch-22 situation we're placed in. But wherever possible, the honorable members can understand the context and assist in having to make your constituency aware of what it is that they need to do, and for them to access programs that are relevant to what their future career aspirations are. Thank you.
Very much, Mr. Hariprasad. Chair, back to you.
Thank you so much. Colleagues, any other questions? If none, I just wanted to ask some extra clarifying questions. Okay, since the 1,297 out of the 1,523 schools with broadband, so that's about what, 85%, how much would it be to get the broadband into the rest of that 15%? I know that the rest of the schools are getting the the stipends in order to ensure that there at least is internet access. But how much would we need in order to have broadband at that last 15%? And you mentioned that maybe there are opportunities within the infrastructure grant. Is it not possible for us to access some of that in order to put broadband in for the last 15%? And then you mentioned the $500 million that we need to implement coding and robotics in all schools in the best possible model across the province. Now, obviously, when a person just hears $500 million, it's a bit of a shock. But if you think about how much money goes into education, one could consider it a drop in the bucket, a drop in the ocean, in comparison to how much education costs for a child. So not only, yes, please do send the draft budget, but when you send the draft budget, obviously that's aspirational. So it's not something that's going to be implemented immediately. As if we could have some indication of how would you like to scale up to making sure that every school and the best possible model has the ability to implement the subject, that would be appreciated, so that we can make sure that the money for the teacher development is budgeted for. The money for the capacity to expand for the infrastructure is all there. That would be appreciated. Yes, any other questions from members? None? Mr. Mohammed?
Chair.
Oh, sorry, Member Christians?
Yeah, I lost contact, but it's fine. Just a question. We're talking about money needed, for resources, and all of that. Just maybe, I don't know if they can answer, but just in 2018, November, our Parliament passed the Western Cape Provincial Education Amendment Bill. We passed it. And that was specifically one of the sections that I can remember was about, collaboration schools and donor-funded schools. How far did the department get with that? Because there's a lot of resources, and Geographical is one of the examples of that, where businesses or community buy into the idea. How far? Because 2018, we've went through the Western Cape, got people, the public participation process. So that was then November 2018, Provincial Parliament then passed that in order to strengthen the authority when it comes to collaboration schools and donor-funded schools. How far is that process? Because this will help us, because government don't have the funds. We'll wait for a long time if we're going to have the funds to do it. But how is this interaction with businesses and communities? Because the amendment was done, and those two donor-funded schools and collaboration schools was part of approving that amendment. So I just want to know, how's that going? Because if we look at the budget and budgetary constraints, we'll never get to where we want to get as fast as we can. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you so much. Mr. Mohammed?
Thank you very much, Chair and honourable members again. So on the issue of the 237 schools, if my memory serves me correctly, I think the reason for the slow rate of conclusion to 100% is because of a structural challenge, which I can't remember at the moment, is impeding that process. So what I would suggest, Chair, is let me speak to the relevant unit that is dealing with it and send you a short written response on the constraints, as well as the projected timeline for getting to 100%. Similarly with the budget, we note your point around, a sort of sequenced description of what we can achieve over time, and we will be more than happy to do that. And then on the amendment bill, the the last time I interacted with the process, there was a challenge by the National Department on that particular initiative. But we can provide you with also a written response from our legal section on where the process is standing. But as far as I'm aware, the processes of the implementation of the collaboration schools is continuing. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you so much. Colleagues, Member Christian, you happy?
Thank you, Chairperson. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much. Colleagues, if there are no other questions, I'm going to thank the department then here for their presentation. It has been quite comprehensive. It's been a lot of detail, and I'm sure that this will not be the last that we'll be engaging on this topic. The STEAMAC subjects such as mathematics, agriculture, coding, robotics, sciences, these are all subjects that many of our children want to take in order to be part of the provincial economy. I mean, given that agriculture is the second biggest GDP contributor in the provincial economy, and subjects such as coding and robotics are now becoming pertinent within the agriculture and even in the car manufacturing sectors, that being able to implement those subjects will mean a lot for many of our communities. And to make sure that we have an uptick in mathematics will also make sure that the children will be able to go and study those respective courses at a TVET or university or other higher learning institution level. And we really appreciate the work that you're doing in this regard. We will deal with some of the requests for information as part of our admin. But if you have any other day-to-day matters that you need to go about, you are welcome to leave the meeting. Thank you so much. I'm just going to ask that the committee remains behind so that we are able to deal with the respective minutes. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Ms. Hassan Musa, if you could just put up the first minutes for us, and then we'll deal with the resolutions after minutes.
Are you able to see it?
Yes.
Yes, thank you so much. We can go down. This is the meeting of 10 May 2022. Okay, we can just check our attendance there, and then page 1. Okay, page 2. Page 3. Page 4. Yes, so as you can see, members, there at the bottom, the resolution, that was actually the resolution today that we completed. So, and just the full stop after 16:30 at the end. Thank you so much. Colleagues, if I could have a mover for the minutes.
I so move, Chairperson.
Thank you so much. If we could have a seconder for the minutes. I know Member Christopher Fry is new, so I'm relying on the old hands to assist me here. Members, let's see here quickly. Member Syed, you were in that meeting. Are you still with us here? If not, that's okay. I know we only need one for moving the minutes, but I was also in that meeting, and I'm happy with the minutes. Member Syed?
Chair, my apologies about that. I was just attending to something. No, that's fine. I know I was in the meeting on the 14th of June, and it's a true reflection. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. That one was the 10th, but thank you so much. We're now at the 14th. Perfect. Okay. That one was regarding the foundation phase curriculum and with an emphasis on ECDs. So we can just check our attendance and the first page. Okay, we can go down. Perfect. Can go down page 2. Can we just check that Mrs. Locus's name is spelled correctly? Is it with the R or is it without the R?
I'll double check the attendance register, Chair, with
Thank you
regards
so
to that.
much. Thank you. Let's go down. Okay, and then that's the last page. If I could have a mover for the minutes.
I move, Chair.
Thank you so much. Can I have a seconder for the minutes?
I second, Chair.
Thank you so much. The minutes are so adopted. We are now at resolutions. Ms. Hassan Musa, do you want to start with the matters that we raised in the meeting that you may have noted, or would you like us to start?
Chair, the ones that I have got thus far is the last lot by Mr. Mohammed with a written response to that last 4 items, which the WCD will put in writing back to us on the timeline of 100% implementation, the response to the education bill, the collaboration schools, as well as the expanding of the infrastructure on everyday schools was also a written response. Anything else the members can provide to me?
Yes, I think Member Christian's one on the education bill was that because it's a challenge national that they're going to ask legal to assist them with that one. The infrastructure one, if I remember correctly, was regarding whether we can use some of the infrastructure grant. Then the draft budget one relates to the coding and robotics implementation, and if a person can scale that up. Which ones did I miss now? Okay, colleagues, did I miss anything in that regard? Is there anything you would like to add?
Chair, I'm covered.
Oh, and I think I also asked how much everything's going to cost. But I think that's probably relating to the draft budget as well. Okay, but if everyone's covered, then we can move on to any others. I have one resolution that Member Bosman asked me to table. He is in hospital at the moment, so I apologize for the fact that he's not tabling it himself, but I'll wait for other members to do theirs first. Going once? Going twice? Okay. Member Bosman asked me if I could table whether we can go back to, let me just get the school's name. Crestway School to do a follow-up. Apparently, the Education Committee did previously an oversight visit to the Crestway School, and he would like us to consider going back to that particular school for a follow-up regarding some of the challenges that were identified there, and that apparently there was a report. Ms. Hassan Musa, was there a report?
Yes, Chair, there was a report, and then there was a follow-up meeting with the MEC for Public Works and WCD. I can forward that report to all members, including the minutes of the meeting that followed that, and then ask for if there are any further developments at the school that has happened after those engagements, before the members find a slot on the program.
Yes, that was what I was going to get to is I don't think we have any slots actually available on the program, so we're going to have to go look and ask programming, especially for a slot. But I just want to find out, is members happy in principle with that, just so that I can liaise with yourself and the programming then to go and find a slot, because I don't think there's any slots available at the moment.
I'm happy, Chair.
Okay. I'm assuming it's all in order then if there's silence on the matter. Yes, I think that's all from my side that I wanted to ask. Anything else? Ms. Hassan Musa, sorry, did I forget something?
No. I was just alluding members that I'll be sending the Hansard section of the 11th of August of the Speaker's ruling to all the members and highlighting that section that the Speaker spoke to as requested in last week's meeting together with the letter.
Perfect, thank you so much. I did read the draft Hansard. It did say guidance. So if it's a ruling that the Speaker's office, I would like to ask that they also then send the ruling then so that we are able to implement it. But to my knowledge, that was guidance notes as per the wording that was used in the Hansard, unless the Hansard has been updated.
My apologies, Chair. You're correct. It is guidance and not a ruling.
Okay, no problem. But we did ask in the previous meeting for the respective documentation. Thank you so much. And then members, just on the study tour report, because I did mention in the beginning of the meeting, but we're going to deal with that particular report next week, just so that we are able to have our social cluster members with us in the meeting when we deal with the particular report. We obviously don't want to adopt anything without them because we went together. But you have the report with you, and if there are any last minute edits that you would like in the report, please do send them to Ms. Hassan Musa so we can ensure that it's a correct reflection for all of us. Thank you so much. But
Chair,
with that then,
Chair.
Member Christians, yes.
Yeah, remember I was not on that tour, so can I just render my apology for that meeting? Thank you.
No problem. We were aiming to do it in the first half an hour of our next meeting. So if you wish, you're also welcome to join a little bit later in the meeting then for the report. However, you are welcome to be there as well.
Thank you, Chair.
No problem. Thank you so much. But with that, I hope you then all have a lovely afternoon further. Stay safe and stay warm. The meeting's adjourned.
Thank you, Chairperson.